Vehicles. The chair calls Thomas Galvan with the Legislative Budget Board to discuss a summary of recommendations.
Good morning, Chair, members. Thomas Galvan with the LVB. I'll be covering the summary of recs for the Department of Motor Vehicles. Starting on page 1, the recommendations provide $529.8 million in all funds for the 26-27 biennium, which is a biennial decrease of $138.5 million. The recommendations maintain...
Thomas, real quick, could you slow down just a little bit?
Oh, yes, sir.
Yes.
So
Thank you, sir.
A
Go ahead.
biennial decrease of $138.5 million in all funds for the biennium. The recommendations maintain the agency's FTE cap at 902 FTEs. If you turn with me to the next page, section 2, for your reference, here's a summary of funding changes in the recommendations, and I'll be covering some of the significant changes on the following sections. So if you move me to page 3, or page 4 rather, to section 3, selective fiscal and policy issues. The first item relates to the registration titling system modernization project. The recommendations include a decrease of $6.8 million in other funds from the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles Fund from appropriations for the RTS modernization phase 1 project. The recommendations provide unexpended balance authority for any ongoing costs in the 26-27 biennium for the phase 1 of the project. For the 26-27 biennium, the agency is requesting $175 million in general revenue funds for the second phase of the RTS modernization project to replace the legacy system. The recommendations do not include funding for this. Item 2 is the Camp Hubbard renewal project, and this accounts for most of that biennial funding decrease you saw on page 1. The recommendations include a decrease of $143 million in other funds from Texas Public Finance Authority revenue bond proceeds for financing the agency's headquarters renewal project in the 24-25 biennium. The recommendations do include unexpended balance authority for any remaining bond proceeds from this biennium for ongoing costs. Item 3 is a summary of the Motor Vehicle Crime Prevention, or MVCPA, appropriations. The recommendations provide $105.3 million in general revenue funds for the biennium for MVCPA grants and administration. And as a reminder, this program is funded by a fee on motor and vehicle insurance policies of $5. With the enactment of SB 224 last session, a dollar was added to that for the catalytic converter theft prevention program, and 20% of the remainder of the fee is appropriated for MVCPA crime prevention purposes. In the 24-25 biennium, estimated biennial appropriations of $49.1 million for the motor vehicle crime prevention and $55.1 million for the SB 224 catalytic converter theft prevention program were included in the budget based on the comptroller's biennial revenue estimate. The recommendations continue funding for those two programs at similar levels, but I want to point out that the comptroller's biennial revenue estimate estimates total MVCPA fee revenue of $285.7 million for the biennium, of which 45.7 would be allocated for MVCPA purposes, the 20% allocation, and 57.1 million would be allocated for the catalytic converter program. And once again, this appropriation is estimated based on the fee allocations for those two programs. Moving on to page 5. For your reference, a summary of rider changes in the bill. There's 4 modified riders to align with funding recommendations and estimates that are included in the recommendations. There are 2 new riders to provide unexpended balance authority between biennia, one for the agency's accounts receivable system project, and the other for the registration and titling system replacement phase 1 project that I mentioned before. And there's 2 deleted riders for one-time reporting requirements and appropriations for the 24-25 biennium. Moving to page 6. Pages 6 and 7 are the agency's exceptional line requests not included in the recommendations, totaling $181.7 million in all funds and 50 additional FTEs. That concludes my prepared remarks. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Thomas. Representative Collier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was very fast, and
I'm sorry.
I'm so new to this, so if anybody that's coming up next, please slow down a little bit so I can catch up with you guys. So I appreciate your information. I see the packet. I have a question about the registration fees. So you collect the registration fees. Do you collect the registration fees for electric vehicles?
The agency collects all vehicle registration fees.
Okay.
Yes.
So I guess, was it last session we passed a $200 registration fee for electric vehicles? Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. That was enacted last session.
Okay, so how is that coming along? Like, what is the revenue on that?
I don't have those numbers. I have to defer to the Department of Motor Vehicles for
Okay.
that.
So that's not you?
That's not me.
Okay. And then this catalytic converter program, that you're funded, you're trying to stop the theft of catalytic converters, right? Is that what the program does? Or?
That's the intent of the program. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and thank you so much, appreciate it. Never mind, sorry. Never mind. I'm gonna ask my questions to DMV.
Members, any questions? Yes.
Sorry.
It's okay. Any questions of Mr. Galvan? Thank you, Thomas. Chair will now call Galena Bowman, Chief Financial Officer, and Roland Luna, Senior Deputy Executive Director with DMV. Please state your name for the record, who you represent, and you may begin your testimony. Also, I apologize if I got yours right for obvious reasons, but if I make a mistake on somebody's name, please correct me.
Will do. Chairman, honorable committee members, good morning. For the record, my name is Daniel Avithia, and I serve as the Executive Director for the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles. Joining me this morning are the department's Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Glenna Bowman, and Deputy Executive Director, Mr. Roland Luna. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to present the department's funding requests for the next biennium. We've provided you with an overview presentation for your reference. The Texas Department of Motor Vehicles powers mobility across the state, registering 26 million vehicles, credentialing motor carriers, investigating consumer complaints, and permitting the movement of goods. We do this in direct partnership with our county tax assessor partners and with participation from more than 20,000 licensed motor vehicle dealers throughout the state. These programs collectively result in $4.5 billion in the biannual revenue collections for the state. The majority of collections are deposited into the State Highway Fund, and the remainder is allocated between the General Revenue Fund and the TXDMV Operating Fund. We greatly appreciate the funding provided in House Bill 1 is introduced, giving the department full base funding for the next 2 years. In addition to those amounts, we are requesting 2 exceptional items listed on page 6 of our presentation. These items will allow us to continue supporting improvements to the department's customer service, operational efficiencies, and data security. Our first exceptional item, described on page 7 through 11 of your handouts, is $175 million to continue the extensive process of modernizing the department's legacy registration and titling system, or RTS as it's referred to. RTS is the backbone of the TXDMV operations, integrating directly with numerous stakeholders, including county tax assessor collectors and vehicle dealers. All of this to support both government and business functions and offer direct services to our motor vehicle customers across the state. RTS is now more than 30 years old, and we recognize that it no longer serves the public the way our stakeholders expect. The system creates inefficiencies that contribute to backlogs and extended times it takes to complete customer transactions. The department is not able to respond efficiently to new legislation, identified emergency security threats, or operate under new opportunities which might be offered by new technologies. In the previous legislative session, the department received $6.8 million to conduct a series of internal and external system evaluations and to determine what solutions exist out in the market. The result of these assessments were used to define the request for our current exceptional item. RTS modernization will fully replace the core system and applications with current technology and platforms. Engineering the new RTS for maximum usability, operability, and future adaptability will provide a stable business process platform to improve the department's ability to rapidly respond to stakeholder needs with manageable costs to the state. Chairman, members, our second exception item on page 12 is a request for $6.8 million and 50 new employees to improve DMV core services and customer support. The new employees will address workload volumes and continue improvements to data security and fraud mitigation efforts. Specific program areas included in the request are the department's customer contact center, enforcement and compliance, cybersecurity efforts, dealer licensing programs, and regional service customer support. Chairman, members, this concludes my prepared remarks. I am certainly happy to answer any questions regarding the department's 26-27 funding needs. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Vitia. Any other folks want to add anything? Okay. Members, any questions? And I think Representative Collier, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now I can ask the question to the appropriate entity. So I had a question about the electric vehicle registration fee, the $200. Have you started collecting it, and how much revenue have you generated from it?
Yes, ma'am, we have started collecting it. Representative Collier and Chairman, if I may defer to our Chief Financial Officer for collections in the amount.
You may, sir.
Good morning. For the record, Glenna Bowman, Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you.
In FY24, we collected $49.6 million.
Okay, and then where does that money go? Like, is it go to your base funding, or?
That funding is deposited to the State Highway Fund.
Okay,
Mhm.
so it goes to the statewide highway fund, helps with maintenance and, okay.
All of the programs
For
that
the-
they have.
Okay,
Yes.
and that is collected, it's a one-time fee? Or is it collected every year?
Go ahead.
If
Oh,
I
now
may,
we got- what's your
Roland
name?
Luna, Deputy Executive Director. So it's allowed, the registrant pays for, if it's a new vehicle, for 2 years, so it's $200 per year. And then it would be $200 at the time of registration annually.
And what are other vehicles that are not powered by electricity? How much?
So the base registration fee for a county is $50, $75, and then there are county-specific fees such as road and bridge and other fees that are applicable for a particular county.
Okay, so like I pay like $70 or something. So, but I have a fuel-powered vehicle. Are electric vehicles paying more? Is that what you're saying?
The fee for an electric vehicle is $200. That was determined by SB 505.
Yes.
There were a number of conversations about what that fee should be. There was public hearings that were had. We provided some data at the time. We produce an annual alternatively fueled vehicles report that specifies the number of vehicles by fuel type, if they're hybrid or electric or they're combustible engines. That information was provided at those hearings as well, and then the committee took that into consideration to come up with the $200 fee per year.
Okay, and then, okay, thank you, I appreciate
ma'am.
that. The digital license plate, is that something that you guys have implemented, and is that under the RTS program? I'm sure.
Digital license plates, we currently do not have a contracted vendor for digital license plates, Representative Collier.
But they're rolling out, right?
Currently, there are no digital license plates in Texas.
Okay, are they
Since
going
the-
to have some?
Once we have a vendor onboarded for digital license plates, the potential does exist for having digital license plates in Texas.
Okay, and is there an appropriation set aside for the vendor and the cost of rolling that program out?
No, ma'am.
So it's not in this LAR for this year?
No, ma'am, not in this LAR.
Okay, so we don't have digital license plates?
Not in this appropriations request.
Okay, and then can you tell me about the catalytic converter program?
Representative, if I may defer to Deputy Executive Director who oversees that program.
Okay,
Roland Luna, Texas DMV DED. Last session, SB 224 was authored by Senator Alvarado, and what that bill created was enhanced penalties for catalytic converter theft, increased regulation and partnership for Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation, DPS, and the Department of Motor Vehicles to share intelligence, to share information for the regulatory framework for the metal recycling entities. In addition to that, the Motor Vehicle Crime Prevention Authority had the ability to administer grants to law enforcement agencies to combat catalytic converter theft, to provide education, and to help with the prevention overall in the state of Texas. Prior to SB 224 passing, the Motor Vehicle Crime Prevention Authority would hover around 24 to 30 task forces around the state. Since SB 224 passed, the MVCPA has awarded 113 grants to law enforcement agencies around the state, many of those task forces being multi-jurisdictional, so there's a number of law enforcement agencies that participate in one task force.
are you tracking statistics on how the program is working?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. As part of our traditional funding with task force operations, this past fiscal year, there were 15,000 vehicle recoveries for FY24, and the same number is going to be, the same type of data is going to be tracked for catalytic converter as well.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Berry.
Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate you guys coming out today on a Monday. I just have a few questions, and I want to follow up to Member Collier's questions regarding catalytic converters. You mentioned recycling. Can you explain a little bit there?
Yes, sir. One of the provisions in SB 224 required the Motor Vehicle Crime Prevention Authority to create a plan of operation, which was essentially a strategy on how information was going to be shared between DPS, TDLR, and DMV. And as a result of this plan of operation, we set up a series of standing meetings so that we could identify what suspicious activities would constitute. And one of the provisions of the bill wanted to ensure the legal commerce and transfer and sale of catalytic converter was occurring. So what it was preventing is someone who had stolen a catalytic converter taking it to a metal recycling entity without the proper documentation. And that's part of our intelligence sharing, and that's part of our standing meetings that we have between the three agencies.
I got you. Okay, I think I happen to have a couple of recyclers in my district, and they talked about this specifically. So it's not a huge deal for them necessarily, but they did see that it was somewhat of an impediment in many cases. So if there's any way I can get some information on what the proper procedure would be in order for them to vet these products that are being brought in, because they really don't have any control over what's brought in, and that goes for other metals as well, copper and such like.
Yes, sir. Representative Berry, if I may add a little bit to this, we have an advisory committee that has been established to partner with metal recycling entities. And what we have observed around the state is that our partnership has been very strong. They've been very responsive. We have a number of metal recycling entities that sit on that advisory committee as well and provide feedback on policy decisions that we make. So we're happy to partner with those in your district as well and answer any questions that they may have.
I appreciate that. I'll actually relay that information to them. Thank you for that offer.
Yes, sir.
My other questions revolve around RTS. And give me a little bit of background on what you're seeing with the current system. Is it the software out of date? It's no longer maintained? And moving forward, I see that you're coordinating with many other agencies as well, or you call them stakeholders in your presentation. I want to know how are they seeing this update, and are they prepared for this at the same time? Is there going to be a phase-in across all these different agencies, and how long is that going to take? So a lot of questions there, and I'm happy to reiterate.
Certainly, Representative. So RTS, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, is an over 30-year-old system. Our primary stakeholders in usage are our tax assessor collectors, over 254 offices throughout the state of Texas. I believe, and I certainly don't want to speak for them, but in every conversation I've had with them, they are very supportive of replacing this antiquated system that operates on an old IBM platform. The system itself, as you know, an old system provides for slow processing, outdated interfaces, integration incompatibilities. Now let's talk a little bit about the skills shortage. The DMV is having to take folks out of retirement that know this system to come in and work on the system. So trying to recruit new talent, if you will, into the agency has been a challenge with this 30-year-old system. And then let's talk a little bit about the maintenance of the system. It's a lot of time and energy trying to patch together fixes for a 30-year-old system, especially when we have a limited knowledge base to be able to work on the system.
I got you. So is there going to be a planned rollout over
Yes, sir.
time? How long
Yes,
is that
sir.
going to take?
We're looking, well, it depends on the type of solution that is selected for replacing RTS. Some vendors can do it faster than others, obviously based on their offerings. So we're looking at about a 5 to 6 year implementation period. And of course, we will work with all of our tax assessor partners throughout the state to ensure that there's maximum usability of the system once we roll it out.
Okay. And I see various entities, you call them stakeholders or whatnot. Insurance companies obviously have the technical wherewithal to handle, large-scale software updates and whatnot. But I also see auto repair shops and those kinds of entities that may not necessarily have, the technical wherewithal to be able to update their systems or move to a new system, quickly. Do y'all have any sort of program that will assist in training those entities on how to utilize the system and become more efficient in those areas?
Absolutely. At the heart of who we are at the DMV, we're a customer service agency representative. And so we will have work groups going forward once we are able to secure the funding for RTS replacement. Work groups that will work and reach out with all of our stakeholders, of course, tax assessor collectors, but as you mentioned, auto repair shops, anybody that wants to come to the table and work with us on replacing this outdated system, we welcome that.
So there's no requirement across the board for all these entities to convert?
Well, we've identified all of the users in the system, so of course we would be reaching out to every single one of them, not every user, but groups of users, if you will, to make sure that there is some stakeholder buy-in for everything that we do as we implement the system.
And I would see at some point you would have a drop-dead date to say, we're no longer supporting this system, you must move over.
I think
imagine.
5 to 6 years would be plenty of notice if we are
Yeah.
successful in securing the funding, but again, there will
Yeah.
be significant outreach and communication efforts on our behalf to reach out to as many folks as we can.
Wonderful, thank y'all.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Representative Garcia Hernandez.
Thank you, Chairman. I had a question regarding inspections here in the state of Texas. My understanding is we are no longer doing vehicle inspections, and I was just interested to what level that impacts the funding for the state.
Representative Hernandez, I'll defer to Deputy Director Luna.
Roland Luna, Deputy Executive Director, Texas DMV, for the safety inspection elimination that went into effect on January the 1st of this year, impacted all but 17 emissions counties. There is a $750 replacement fee that is associated with those safety-only counties. So I'll give you an example. So if you are in Caldwell County, that is a safety-only county, you are no longer required to obtain a safety inspection prior to having your vehicle registered, but the $7.50 replacement fee is going to be included as part of your normal registration. If you're in an emissions county, one of the 17, Harris County, Dallas County, one of the larger metropolitan areas, you're required to obtain an emissions test prior to receiving your registration. As far as numbers are concerned, those emissions counties account for approximately 60% of the amount of registered vehicles here in the state of Texas.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Representative or Vice Chair Lujan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know I've talked to your agency a little bit about, I want to talk about HB 718, which will be rolling out in July. And I've had a couple of concerns in our office. I do feel better. I went to your website, I looked at everything, and things look like they're going well. But for our committee, could you just give us an overview of the rollout? Are we hitting the dates? And particularly, this is a tough rollout because you've got all the dealers, we've got 20,000 plus dealers that have to get all of this in. And I just want to make sure, there was some concerns about have we provided updates on the APIs that needed to be shared with the various agencies so that we can have a smooth rollout. So can you just give us a high overview of how that is all going?
Representative Lujan, we'd be happy to, as I've mentioned, as you mentioned actually, House Bill 718 is a significant business process change for the state of Texas, impacting all 20,000 dealers. Deputy Director Luna is in charge of that project and can provide the more finer details about where we are and how things are looking as we head into implementation date of July 1st. Roland?
Roland Luna, DED with Texas DMV. Vice Chair Lujan, it's a comprehensive bill. As you know, 254 counties. We have 4,000 locations that access the registration and title system. Terminals that we provide. We have 22,000 dealers, and we provide information to 83,000 law enforcement officers that are patrolling highways and that are protecting the state of Texas. So when you look at our stakeholder groups, we have provided a number of training sessions on how to sign up for the agency's electronic system to submit transactions, which is Web Dealer. Just recently, we had more than 1,000 people show up for a 2-day training course. We have trained more than 12,000 individuals on how to use our systems. With the 254 counties as well, Web Dealer is a requirement. So now dealers that are selling vehicles on July the 1st moving forward, they're going to be required to submit those transactions electronically. Well, not all dealers and not all tax assessor collectors have been doing so because it wasn't a requirement. That's why we have really ramped up our efforts to ensure that people are familiar with the system and have some comfort with submitting those transactions. With that being said, we have been able to grow that participation rate with tax assessor collectors from 100 when we started the training initiative in February of 24 to more than 220 now. So 220 of the 254 counties have been trained. They're familiar with Web Dealer, and then we're doing the same for dealers. We're doing the same for dealers there. In addition to this, when you were talking about capacity on the APIs, I think that's extremely important because a number of dealers use software like DealerTrack, which is their system that ties into our system. We evaluated all of the enhancements that would be necessary across all of the DMV systems. We wish that we had RTS modernization done by now because then it would require less programming. What we have identified are there was more than 300 different items that needed to be programmed and enhanced to make sure that the system will continue to be stable, to ensure that it could handle the bandwidth of 254 counties and 22,000 dealers. And we are working through those enhancements now. We continue to work very closely with all of the dealers, both the independent and the franchise dealers, to make sure that we listen to their suggestions and make sure that we are including those as part of our enhancements. We are also working very closely with law enforcement toll authorities on the new plate types that will be replacing temporary tags as well. We have completed all of that work on the design and conducting the retroreflectivity studies to make sure that when you go through a tollway, that the new plates can be read. We are also making sure that for law enforcement that we are providing some visual indicators for these new plates. Because with buyer's tags and 30-day permits and one-trip permits going away, we wanted to ensure that there was a visual indicator for law enforcement. The other part of this system that I think is really important as part of the change is that law enforcement needs to be able to query the plate when someone buys a vehicle on July the 1st moving forward. So at the time that a vehicle is purchased on July the 1st, a metal plate will be assigned and law enforcement will be able to query that. In about 5 minutes, our system will update. We continue to work very closely with all of our stakeholders with the implementation, and if there is more detailed information that you or any of your constituents need, we're happy to meet with them and work with them.
Okay. One of the other things that I was concerned about, only because I'm not seeing the background. I'm sure you've got a good project plan, a good rollout. Do we have on testing? First of all, are we partnered with any big vendor to do this, or are we doing this in-house?
Yes, sir. Roland Luna, DED with DMV. We're using the Amazon model. Statutorily, we're required to leverage our partnership with TDCJ to manufacture plates.
Okay.
We now have a contract with a distribution center. Once the plates are manufactured, we're going to move them from TDCJ to our distribution center, and then our distribution center is going to help us with the ordering and the transport of those plates to each of the dealers and all of the tax assessor collectors. The legislature also awarded us some appropriations for an inventory management system. And that system is used and will be used to track and order and assign plates for dealers, for tax assessor collectors, and the DMV. So between the technology and the distribution center, we will be able to get the plates out there on time. We do have a beta test that will go into effect in April, where we're working with dealers and tax assessor collectors to make sure that everything is smooth before July the 1st of this year.
Okay, so that, and the IMS system, is that a proprietary technology company that we're using for that, or is that a home-built system?
We went through a competitive process for that, and
Okay.
we are working with Aptricity. They have contracts with the Department of Defense, Verizon. They specialize in inventory management and control. We have already obtained the tool. It's being integrated into our existing systems now.
Okay, and then on the testing side of this whole system, is that going to be done when you do your beta testing or your soft rollout, or are we doing that independently before we do the rollout?
We're doing it well before, and we're
Okay.
going to be doing it with the beta test as well, two-part.
Okay. And from your perspective, things are going, the reason why I'm a little concerned about this, because we have a lot of dealers, all of us do in our districts, and they're very, very concerned about this. And I always get weary when new system roll out because there's always going to be hiccups. And we're going to get the first calls on all of these things like that. So, but y'all feel confident from where you're sitting that the rollout and the whole project is going smooth?
Yes, sir. We are on time. Our testing has proven fruitful. We have partners that have been identified to help us stress test our system well in advance of the implementation date. And if we detect any issues, we'll mobilize resources to make sure that we can correct it in advance of the implementation date.
Okay, thank you. Sure.
Representative Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all for being here. Couple questions for you. There's a few of your requests that are for additional FTEs. I could be wrong. I think I saw one where you're asking for 50 something. Does that sound right? It was one of your requests for 50 FTEs.
50.
50, yeah. 50. How many FTEs are in that department or division right now? Like, how big of a change is that?
Are you asking total number of employees versus what we're asking for?
Yeah, and in what division are the 50 FTEs
Oh, I
going
see.
to, and what's the current size of that division
I see.
by FTE count?
We do have FTEs going into our customer contact center. We've got about 60 FTEs there. We have
There's currently 60, and you're asking for 50 new, or
no.
where are they going?
So I'm going through all the divisions
Okay.
that would be impacted by the FTE request.
Yep.
We would have our customer contact center, our enforcement and compliance division, our IT division for cybersecurity efforts, our motor vehicle division for dealer licensing efforts, and then our regional service centers throughout the state of Texas, all 16.
Okay. On vehicle title and registration systems, can you remind or tell me about roughly how much you guys are asking for to build or to maintain that system?
So to replace RTS entirely, we're asking for $175 million.
Got it. Has there been any contemplation within the agency or lessons learned or practices from other states with contemplating contracting with an outside firm to do that may or may not result in any cost savings? Any discussions or deliberations on that?
Absolutely. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, Representative Harrison, we conducted an external assessment which did include identifying future state RTS solutions and the various offerings that are out there by various vendors. Certainly also refining that cost estimate of $175 million. And we did do a market analysis throughout the country to see what other states have modernized their registration and titling system. So we have lots of information on what other states have done, what this modernization effort has cost them. Interestingly enough, Texas is one of only 6 states in the entire nation that has not modernized its registration and titling system.
Yeah, and I heard that in the opening testimony, and I appreciate it. I'll be honest, it just feels high, that number. And so just if you guys could, if you don't mind, keep my office posted as you, I think the word you used was refining that number.
We'd be happy to, Representative Harrison.
Okay, one last thing. On page 13, I was just really surprised to see this. I'm reading from it here directly, State Auditor's Office report, executive compensation, state agencies. You are asking to raise the executive director's salary, if I'm reading this correctly, to $270,000. Am I reading that right?
That's up to 270, and I'll defer to my Chief Financial Officer, Representative Harrison, to address that.
Yeah, tell me about that, please. Thanks.
Yes, sir. Thank you
Yeah.
for the question. Glenna Bowman, CFO. The board oversees the compensation for our executive director. As Daniel indicated, that $270,000 is a maximum amount. Currently, our executive director is topped out. We have a $230,000 cap, and he's at that limit. So the board, if nothing else is adopted, will not be able to give him an increase for anything for 2 more years through the end of FY 2027. During the current biennium, he's only received a total of about 6.5% over the 2 years of the biennium, and that's less than the across-the-board salary for all state employees. So we've got salary compression that's happening, and that will be worse if there's no additional amount. But again, it's a maximum, so the board wouldn't necessarily increase his salary to that maximum on September 1 of 2025.
What does he make right now? You said, did you say 230?
230.
And what do you think the board is contemplating changing it to if the ceiling was raised to 270?
I cannot speak to what the board would raise it to right now.
Yeah.
I know that they wanted to make sure that they had room within that to get them 2 to 4 years down the road with salary so that we can retain our executive director.
Is there an issue with retaining him? He's been there a while, right?
I'm the executive director.
Hi.
I've been
I know,
here.
yep.
Yeah,
I was
I've
surprised.
been-
I know why you pushed the mic over, but happy to talk to
Yeah,
you
it'd
directly.
be a little self-serving for me to answer that question,
No, it's
but
okay.
I've been executive director for 2.5 years and
Yeah.
total years with the department, 10 years, sir.
Yeah, no.
Over 10 years.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Of course, government salaries are all public, so there's no personal, private information being discussed here,
Indeed.
especially as taxpayers are paying for it.
Yes, sir.
And I understand it's slightly awkward talking to you about it, but this does matter as a fiduciary of tax dollars for the hundreds of thousands of Texans millions of Texans that we serve. Roughly how many total FTEs does your agency have?
We have 902 FTEs that we're allocated for.
902?
Yes, sir.
So less than 1,000.
Yes, sir.
What's your total budget? Roughly.
350 million.
350 million a year.
300, so less than 1 billion, like less than half of 1 billion.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just a little surprised to see numbers like this. Do you know what the salary of the governor is?
No, sir, I do not.
It's about $155,000. Do you know what the salary of the Secretary of Defense for the United States is?
No, sir, I do not.
It's about $240,000. The Secretary of Defense has about 3 million personnel under his AOR. Do you know what the Secretary of HHS makes for the United States?
No, sir, I do not.
It's about $240,000. Secretary of HHS oversees a $1.7 trillion budget and 85,000 staff and 100,000 contractors. I'm trying to understand here how it is possible for a small state agency to say that we need to pay the head of it roughly the same amount of money as the Secretary of Defense for the United States of America and significantly more than the governor of the state of Texas. Please help me understand this.
For the record, Glenna Bowman, I don't know that I can help you understand
Yeah.
that particular argument.
Well, you've got it in your LAR, so I hope there's a good
Yes,
justification.
no, I can
for it.
absolutely talk to that.
Yeah.
The board directed us, first of all, to look at the salary. We have comparable salaries to executive directors at other agencies within the state of Texas.
Yeah.
And based on that information, Mr. VT's salary, or the DMV's executive director salary, is about on the halfway point, maybe a little bit lower. And basically.
So other state agencies are paying this, is what you're saying?
They are, yes,
Got
sir.
it. Do any of those state agencies have more responsibilities than the governor or the Secretary of Defense of the United States of America?
I don't know, sir, but
Yeah,
I would
well,
probably
here's an
hazard a
obje-
guess that
oh,
they do not.
Yes, that would be a safe guess. Here's an objective question. Do any of those state agencies, and does your state agency have a bigger budget than the U.S. Department of Defense or the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services?
No, sir.
What about FTEs? Do you have more FTEs than the Pentagon?
No, sir.
All right. I honestly, when I see a request like this, it really undermines, in my opinion, any reason to have confidence that this entire LAR was put together with any serious thought towards
Okay.
protecting taxpayer money. I'm really disappointed to see this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Representative Collier.
Oh, thank you so much. My understanding is that LBB doesn't review the federal positions, they review the state. So any comparison would not be, they would not be able to provide a comparison for recommendations, is that right?
That is correct, at least at this time.
Right.
It is public information, yes,
Yeah,
sir.
but they're looking at you as a state agency, and just because it would be approved doesn't mean it would happen. It would just be the ability to do it. So
Yes.
you're not saying that the salary would increase. It would just be an option to remain competitive in the event that you have to go out and do that.
Yes, ma'am. It's an authorization, a
It's just-
ceiling.
And it's not like, well, is this money that can be absorbed within the existing budget?
Yes, ma'am.
So you're not asking for a specific line item to increase the salary?
No, we're not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Members, any questions?
Yep.
Any further questions?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but you are asking for more money from the taxpayers in your LAR, right?
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay. So, and money is fungible, correct?
I'm not sure how you're using the term, I'm sorry.
It's just axiomatically true that money is fungible.
Okay.
Okay. So, as to the state official comparison, since that is of apparent concern to my colleagues up here, let's keep it to the state level. Does the executive director of the DMV have more responsibilities, more FTEs, or a greater budget than the governor of the state of Texas?
I would have to go and look at the governor's budget, but not more responsibility, obviously, than the governor.
Yeah, or more FTEs in the entirety of the executive branch, right?
Correct.
Right. The current salary of your executive director is about $80,000 more than the governor of the state of Texas. So I'm happy to keep to state level comparisons, but I'm really disappointed to see this. Thank you.
Members, any further questions? Just a couple questions on the IT system, right? So we've had several phases on the rollout of the new technology, this 30-year system. Is that my understanding?
Yes, sir. We've conducted internal and external assessments.
Okay, and so on your slide, it has like a timeline of 20, like by the end of 2027. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so that would be, these are dollars that would be phased in to try to get us off of the system that we are currently, that our local tax assessor or taxing entities use to issue the vehicle registrations. Is that?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Okay. And obviously there's a reason why you're doing that, because you get tons of complaints from counties like ours in Harris County that a 30-year system, they got to call people from here to go down there to work on the system because it crashes all the time. Is that a fair statement?
The system has its unique challenges, and it does impact the entire state when it does go down. But yes, we work with our tax assessor collectors to remedy any issues that they're seeing in our system, whether it's slowness or downtime, things of that nature.
Because you've had history of it crashing.
Yes,
in
sir.
local, and it happens often.
It happens more than we would like for it to happen, yes,
Correct.
sir.
And what you're asking, and y'all are, of all the state agencies in this, in state government, you're very relatively small budgetary-wise, but your impact is huge because you interact with so many millions of
Right.
vehicles. Is that a fair statement?
26 million registered vehicles throughout the state, 254 county tax assessors throughout the state, along with all of their staff that are using the system. This is, like I said, the backbone of the DMV operations is RTS.
And let alone dealers, as the vice chair mentioned, or the recyclers and new bills that have come out that we're asking you to do in catalytic converters. You're asked to do a lot, but you're having to backfill the dollars in your requests. Is that, am I making myself clear in that question?
No, sir, I'm not understanding.
We're asking you to do a lot.
Yes, sir.
Right. You're the public interfacing, and with the 20 plus million vehicle
Yes, sir.
registrations, you interact with the public on the daily basis. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Our tax assessor partners, as well as our 16 regional service centers throughout the state of Texas, all
Okay.
day.
And just for the, and our hope is that in, part of your LAR and your exceptional items, I think there was 181 million requested in exceptional items. Is there an urgency to kind of incorporate those dollars early so that we can get the system up and running better so our tax assessor collectors can do it?
Absolutely. If we can front load the amount of funding that's necessary to replace the system, we can probably attract some significant and, I guess, better vendors, if you will, to be interested in helping us replace this system. It is the backbone of our operations at the DMV, and it's absolutely run its course over the 30 years of usage, and it's time to replace it.
In every session, we, let alone passing the General Appropriations Act, but there's various bills that are passed each session that we ask you to do X, and then you're having to
Right.
scramble to try to get compliant. Is that fair?
That's absolutely fair. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
One of those was mentioned today was the catalytic converter. That was a new bill, Senator Alvarado's bill. I was a supporter of that bill. And just for the committee's information, so the rationale for the bill was it was named by Deputy Darren Almendares, who was a Harris County Sheriff's deputy, who was killed as he tried to apprehend, stop a group of young men who were trying to steal his own catalytic converter at a grocery store in North Houston. And in Harris County, catalytic converter theft and across the state, but particularly in Harris County, has been a very targeted type of crime that the bill was passed in his honor. And we asked y'all to do, and for the record too, he was a close personal friend of mine. He was lived about less than a mile from me. So he was a very dear friend of mine. I was happy to support that bill. But again, we were asking you to do more with the resources that you have. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Okay. If you could get with our office, we'd like to help you get the resources you need so that, the public interfacing between, obviously your shop, our local county assessors, folk, or tax offices, help us help you so that public interfacing is better, and we want to be partners in that process. And I guess just to reiterate, the cap on the salary, I mean, we've done this we do this often, but they don't necessarily, the board, any of the boards in whatever state agency, they just gives you the authority to go up to the max. Oftentimes, they don't hit that max, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Members, if there are any further questions, we can stop there with our questions here. And we thank y'all for your testimony, and I'm sure you'll be, and please get with each of the members as well so that if they have any individual questions, they can be answered as well. So I appreciate y'all's testimony.
We'd be happy to, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, guys.